It's the Mixed Martial Arts Hour with
The Mixed Martial Arts Hour back in your life on this Monday, September 19th, 2016. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani back inside our New York City studio. It is kind of cold and rainy outside, so I'm very happy to be inside talking to you for the next 3.5, 4 hours about the great sport that is mixed martial arts. Another busy week in the books. Very exciting stuff to talk about. UFC and Bellator had events this past weekend. Bellator, kind of a subpar one, but they did make some major headlines. The biggest news of the week by far came late Thursday, and that was that Chael Sonnen, yes, the Chael Sonnen, the bad guy, the American gangster himself, has signed with Bellator. Kind of came out of nowhere. Got some rumblings early Thursday that something was in the works, and then late Thursday night, the Associated Press reported that Chael Sonnen had parted ways with Bellator. Chael Sonnen had parted ways with the UFC and had signed with Bellator. Who saw this coming? Of course, for the longest time, I had said that I believed he was on the comeback trail, that I believed he was not 100% retired, that I believed he would fight again. Never in a million years did I think that fight would be for Bellator. This was a UFC lifer. This was the guy that some people thought would replace Dana White at some point. So anyway, that was massive. UFC had a show in Hidalgo, Texas. Some interesting stuff. Chaz Kelly with a very impressive 19-second, I believe it was, submission. Fastest in featherweight division history. Was it 19 seconds? Something like that. 19, 18 seconds. Michael Johnson with a fantastic victory over Dustin Poirier, and Derek Brunson with a very impressive victory as well over Uriah Hall. There was a lot that happened over the past week, and there's a lot to come this week as well. It's kind of an exciting week for women's MMA with Invicta holding a very solid show on Friday. The UFC back on Saturday in Brasilia with a show headlined by Chris Cyborg. Ryzen is back. There's some interesting names, including Miracle Crocop. That has nothing to do with women's MMA, of course, but the fun never stops in mixed martial arts, and we have a super stacked show for you today, this afternoon on the MMA Hour. So let's get into the lineup, and let's get to our first guest, because there's no better way to start this show than with our first guest. Let me run it down very quickly here. Derek Brunson, the victorious Derek Brunson, will join us at 4:10. At around 3:10, we'll be joined by Michael Johnson to talk about his big win over Dustin Poirier. Cult favorite Patty the Batty Pimblett is going to join us at 2:45. I have not been hit up by so many fans to get a non-UFC fighter on the show. The last time I was hit up this much was, I hate to say it, but was Conor McGregor after he became a two-divisional champion. And there are comparisons here. Patty just became the Cage Warriors featherweight champion, and at 2:45, we'll talk to him. I am looking forward to that. He is quite the character. The Scouser himself. 2:25, Ally Quinto will join us. A lot going on in his life. Sage Northcutt at 2:05. Always a pleasure to talk to Super Sage. 1:45, Ed Soares will stop by with some major news that will change, not the face of MMA, but big news in the MMA world. Chris Cyborg stops by at 1:30 from Brasilia. But first, let me get to the Skype machine here. And I said at the top of the show, there's no better way to start this week's show. There was only one way that we could properly start this week's show, and it's with that man, Chael Sonnen. There he is, the newest member of the Bellator roster, fighting at gangsterweight. Don't call him a light heavyweight, a middleweight, a heavyweight, a welterweight. There he is, Chael Sonnen. Wow, how about this? Chael, congratulations to you. What a big deal this is. Thank you for joining us.
Couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Okay, so this is a shoot right here, right? We're not working, we're shooting on today's show, correct?
All right.
Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning. What point did you decide that you were coming back? Was it when you announced your retirement 2 years ago? Was it 6 months ago? Was it 2 months ago? When did you decide that you are going to fight again?
It was a meaningful period of time. I'm not certain. I'm not certain what the day was, but physically, I've been getting ready for a while.
Was there something that happened mentally? Was there a shift? Did you start to miss it? Was there a fight that you watched where you said, "Okay, it's time for me to come back"?
No, I didn't have any moment like that. It was, I went through suspension, and I was a little busy, and I was doing some stuff, and thought, well, maybe this is just all coming at the right time. And I never wanted to be done. I always wanted to want to keep doing it, but I had a moment where I didn't. I just didn't. I didn't want to put in the work. I didn't want to do the work. I didn't want to do what it took to go out and compete in the sport. And that period, it didn't last very long. It's distant memory now. It was a long time ago, but I remember that coming. I remember trying to deal with that. But yeah, I've had my eye on this for a while.
Now, we've talked, even before this news came out, we've talked privately a little bit, and I've extended my condolences to your family over the loss of your daughter. And obviously, I know that's very private, but I just want to ask how you and your wife are dealing, with this incredible pain, and if that had anything to do with your return to MMA.
Well, I appreciate that. I never mind talking about her. She was very beautiful, and I only got to know her for a few days, but she really was very beautiful, Ariel, and thank you for being there for me and my wife during that. But yeah, how are we dealing with it? Oh man, I mean, it's a life-changing thing. I can't imagine we would ever get past it. I think it probably just changes you for the future. My wife is doing really well. She was battling listeria, which is a pretty rare disease, particularly here in America, and she beat listeria. So physically, she's doing 100%, and she's as beautiful as ever. You should see that woman.
And was it? I saw the videos of you and your son, which were very, heartwarming to see you back in the gym and whatnot. But did that change? Like, did you think about not coming back? Did that make you want to come back even more? How did what happened to you and your wife affect your professional career?
Yeah, it was definitely the final nail in the coffin. I mean, I was leaning towards coming back. I was in the gym. I was working hard. I was, visualizing it and thinking about that. But yeah, when that all happened, that was it. I was coming back. And I don't know why. I don't know why the two tie in together, but they did.
Okay. When you were on our show not that long ago, you said that, you're not making any, you're not holding back on us. You want to come back, but you need to go through some steps. You need to get back into the testing pool. You need to get tested. So it sounded back then that you were trying to get back into the UFC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
And you did several tests. How many tests did you take?
I did at least 4. I think that is the number 4, but I did at least 4. And that was the first process. So you're talking about the UFC. So let me set it up for the viewers. So the UFC deals with USADA, and they have what's known as a pool, a testing pool. And you have to be part of that pool for 4 months. Now, Bellator, who I'm with, they're not with USADA. They go under state guidelines. So the state of California, by example, which is Bellator's home, they often use USADA. But as far as being in a pool and the policies changing, they're not subject to the same protocol.
You were telling me after doing some of those tests that you were like, okay, I want to know the results. I want to know if I can continue. I don't know what's in my system from, a previous lifetime. Did you get the results from all those tests?
Well, no news is good news.
Yeah.
With USADA. I don't think they get a hold of you and go, hey, I think you're just supposed to assume you passed, and then you find out that you didn't. So did I get results? No. Did I pass everything? Yes.
At what point did you realize that you were free to negotiate with other organizations?
Well, I can't remember the timeline, but I did not know that was an option. I thought I was under UFC contract, and there's been times in my UFC career where that contract lapses or you just fulfill it, and I've never thought about ever not going somewhere else or looking around for a different place to compete. It never even crossed my mind. I was always with the UFC and was always going to be with the UFC. So I don't know at what point I realized that paperwork had passed some dates. That was handled by Mike and Jeff, my managers, but it was recent. It was just recently.
So you come to the realization that you are technically a free agent. Do you go back to the UFC and say, hey, let's do a deal here. I want to be in the UFC?
I had my talks all over the place. When I finally talked with Coker only asked one thing, and he just said, "Don't shop me. If you want to do a deal, I'll put my best and final offer forward first. But I don't want to get shopped if that's what this is about." So that was literally the one and only thing he asked for. So we said, okay, we won't shop you.
Considering the success that you had in the UFC, did you feel any loyalty or obligation to Dana White? I know Lorenzo's not there anymore and the organization is very much changing, but did you feel like, okay, let me try to figure out a deal with these guys first before I go to the Cokers of the world?
No, not really. From a loyalty standpoint, sure, absolutely. But a lot of that, what you're asking me, would be like behind the scenes and the paperwork and the negotiations. And I stay out of that stuff.
Okay.
My managers call me. I used to deal with a lot of that myself, and I used to think that was the best way to do it. But over time, man, I had to delegate that.
I guess the point that I'm getting at is you're still a very, very, very big name in this sport. I'm surprised they didn't try to keep you. Are you surprised they didn't try to?
I knew that was your point. Yeah. I knew that was your point the whole time. I was going to let you dance around it until you finally asked the question. Listen, here's how I would answer this question. I was not under contract with the UFC when I signed with Bellator.
Sure. But
that's it. I am a Bellator fighter now.
The wording of that statement is very interesting. You realize that, right?
Very prepared. Very prepared. I felt like this was going to come up, but I'm comfortable with my answer. Sure. And we should move on.
Okay, fair enough. When you signed the contract that you are a Bellator MMA fighter, what was that feeling like? You've been a part of the UFC for so long. Did it take? I'm sure you're happy. You're getting paid handsomely. But what was it like? Before it came out. Wow, I'm now on the other side of the tracks, as you put it. I'm now with WCW, as you sort of put it. What's that like? What was that feeling like?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, and it was a big contract and all that, but it wasn't a cash grab. People say, money can make you happy or whatever. I got $10 million, Ariel, and I'm just as happy now as when I had 9. So I don't really know where that expression came from, but Yeah, it is structured a little bit different. They're different business models. One is in the pay-per-view business model. One is in TV ratings and advertisers. So they aren't the same contracts. They are two different things. And I just want a chance to compete, man. I want to go out there and compete, and that was really it. I didn't get a lot further into that than I don't have an opponent yet. By example, like. I was out doing media. The day that all this broke, I was doing some media, and I was about 20 minutes into it. I was talking to Michael Stetz, and I was just stumbling over myself, and I couldn't figure out what was off. And I finally realized, well, I don't have anything to promote. I kind of did this a little out of order. I've got to deal with the company, but I don't have a fight. I don't have a date. I don't know the opponent. I don't know a weight class. There's no tickets on sale. I don't have anything to tell the fans. Hey, make sure you tune in, mark this day down. I don't have any of that. So in that regard, I've kind of done things. I haven't quite connected the dots. It went a little bit out of order. So I'm trying to speed that up. It appears it's going to be Tito Ortiz in November, but a lot of that's just me talking right there. I don't have any word yet.
Okay, if it is Tito Ortiz November 19th in San Jose, do you like that as your first fight? Does that make sense?
And that's what I think it's going to be.
Okay.
So thanks for saying that. I think it's going to be November 19th and Tito in San Jose and all that bit. But yeah, I like that as a first fight. I like it a lot. There's only a handful of guys I think that I'm likely to end up matched up with right out of the gate. Then things will change. But right out of the gate, I think that the likely suspects are Rampage, are Tito. I heard Rory's name get thrown out there, but I don't know how likely that is. I don't even know if that makes a ton of sense. I hear that Fedor's coming, and I had some questions. Would you go up to heavyweight and fight Fedor? And I think they're going to get Vanderlei too if they don't already have him. I know Vanderlei's got some deal worked out. Perhaps it's with Ryzen and not Bellator specifically, but then Bellator and Ryzen have something worked out. I say that as a fan because I watched King Mo, who's with Bellator, go over and do some stuff in Japan with Ryzen. So they must have some kind of a relationship. And I think those are the likely suspects, probably first, second, and third. I think that's probably the guys I'll be drawn from for right now.
Have you heard anything about a 4-man Legends tournament?
Yes. In Bellator?
Yeah, you, Fedor, Rampage, Vanderlei, Tito. Now that's 5 people. Who's
I have not heard anything specifically about that. I thought you were asking me just, is Bellator going to keep doing tournaments? To my understanding, they are. But no, I haven't. Are you breaking something to me?
I'm just asking you. I'm just asking. Hey, we're shooting here.
Oh, you're saying like that'd be a good idea? I think that could be a good idea. I like tournaments myself, but I like them in one night. I'm speaking as a fan. I like when tournaments are done in one night. If you call it a tournament and you spread it out, I don't know if that's a tournament or if that's just the company moving forward with projected fights that could take place. When tournaments go down in there in one night and a guy's got to take on 2 men, or in the olden day 3 men in one night, 8-man tournament, I thought that was a lot of fun. I personally enjoyed watching that, but I see what you're doing now. You're getting, and I like where your head's at. I just thought you were breaking something. I thought you were telling me something that I had missed.
This is by far the biggest contract of your career, right?
It'd be hard to say, man. I mean, I had the record with Anderson Silva. Right. That was a one-off night. We had the.
But as far as like a multi-fight contract,
the all-time record. It's a big contract.
Yeah. What kind of dealings did you have with Coker before all of this? Have you ever crossed paths with him?
I had him on my podcast. And I had met him. Matt Lindland fought in a Strikeforce fight, and I had met Coker in a hallway in passing really fast. And I feel like I've known him for years, because our world is so small. But I had never actually visited with him. And I had him lined up for a podcast, had him on the podcast, and that was really the only time I'd ever spoke to him.
I know you don't have an official date yet, but it's looking likely. Just being back in the news as a fighter, having a contract, do you feel different? Like, do you feel like now you have this mission, now you have a target? Does that change something in your head when you have all of that in place?
Yeah, definitely. That's the one part that's been missing. Like, even when I'm going through preparation or training for this or going to the gym and working out or helping somebody else or whatever it is, it's hard to turn that corner. It's hard, when you start getting tired or you start getting banged up, to push through that if you don't have a finish line out there. And that's one thing I couldn't duplicate. I was going to practice. I was doing the runs. I was doing the lifts. I was doing everything you're supposed to do. But the intensity's different, and I didn't have the discipline or the mental toughness or the ability, however you want to call it, to manufacture a deadline. That's largely why I jumped into grappling, Ariel, just so that there was a specific date, a specific opponent, somebody to really hone in and peak for, to make sure that I did have some of those peaks instead of just staying steady. Because I did have eyes on this and a fantasy about, one day coming back to MMA, being done with the suspension, going through all the processes. So, it did change things. It did. I had a sparring day on Saturday, 2 days ago, and I could feel it. I could feel the difference that, there's a point now.
You raised a lot of eyebrows on Friday on your conference call when you said that per your contract, you will be fined $500,000 and lose your entire purse if you fail a drug test. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100% of the purse and $500,000. And that's just to Bellator.
Wow.
That's not before you deal with commission issues. And that could be standard, Ariel. I didn't know that was going to catch on or whatever, but that could be boilerplate. I have no idea. I just know it's in mine. And, when you're coming out of the principal's office like I am, I did wonder when I saw that, okay, did they only give that to me, or is this, and I don't know the answer to that, but
I don't think that's standard. I don't think that's standard. And I'm wondering, if you fight in California, are you okay with the random out of competition drug testing? Because, Andy Foster, who you praised on the conference call, is one of the very best in the business when it comes to that.
Yeah, and see, I appreciate you saying that, because Andy deserves that. And the other side of that is people got asked, Bellator gets asked, why do you guys not use USADA? And there's some people that are just married to those letters, man. They don't even know what they're saying. They just, somewhere somebody told them USADA was great. And so they love to run with that. But historically, they actually have their facts wrong. Bellator started and is based out of California, and Andy Foster was the first commissioner to start using that organization to test his athletes. He just paid for it himself or had the state fund pay for it. And so it was actually Bellator guys were the first ones tested through USADA. Even though it's not in policy historically, that is the timeline. Bellator was tested first.
Do you think Bellator, part of the reason why they signed you is to be a promoter, not just for your own fights, but for their organization? I noticed on the conference call, you did a fantastic job of promoting the card that night. Do you think that they're going to ask you to be a sort of quasi-promoter?
I don't think I'll have anything to do outside of my contract. Now, I like to participate and contribute, man. I'm just a big fan of MMA. I love boxing, amateur wrestling. I've got the things that I like to watch. So I'm happy to participate and contribute in those ways. But, yeah, I mean, there's no secret. They brought me over for ratings. It's the bottom line. They brought me over for ratings, and they've got some guys that move the needle. But it's the plight that any promoter has. You can't have enough guys like that. You just can't. Even the UFC, they've got a bunch of stars, man. They have some awesome fights, but they're putting on 53 events a year, and that can be tough. So there's opportunities out there, and you never know. Week in, week out, month to month, year to year, you never know how many guys am I going to have, that can really fill up a building. But that's the business. That's the promoter's got to figure that out.
You were such a great promoter and fighter for Dana White, especially towards the end of your UFC run. What was that last conversation like with him when you said, "Okay, thanks for the time. I'm going elsewhere"?
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I mean, Dana's a shark, and I mean it as a compliment. Some guys have it as tough. Dana's a shark, and he's tough, man. I don't know how else to put it.
So was it contentious?
I just tell you, he's a shark. I'm comfortable with those words.
Okay.
I mean, Dana's tough, and that's it.
How would you describe the departure? Was it amicable? Do you feel like there's some heat now, some tension? How would you describe it?
I don't know. Here's what I would tell you, Ariel. Here's what I would tell you.
Okay.
I am on a Legends ass whipping tour, and I'm starting with Tito Ortiz. All right, I'm starting with Tito Ortiz on November 19th. All I need is a contract. This could not be any more official of a call out. I don't have the linguistic ability to challenge somebody more articulately or clear. And if Tito does not want to accept, I'll never bully him again, man. I'm not here to pick on him. I will take a no as a default, and I'll move on. But for right now, my message to you and the whole community that watches your show is November 19th, the bad boy and the bad guy.
Are you worried about his injuries, that he might not make it to that day, that you will get emotionally invested, that you will prepare, and then something will happen along the way?
Not if he says he'll be there.
Okay.
One thing about Tito, if he accepts the challenge, I can't remember the time him pulling him out. I know he shows up, he backs up a Brinks truck full of excuses. He comes with them every time. He drops them every time. I get all of those things, but I can't remember a time where he gave his word and pulled out.
What's the impetus to this feud? Like, did you guys have a run-in back in the day? I mean, you've been in the sport for so long, both of you. When did it first start?
Ariel. You know good and well your audience doesn't know the meaning of the word impetus, okay? You know good and well everybody's running to Google. I could say anything right now and these dummies watching would have no idea. I could give you the recipe to chocolate chip cookies and everybody'd be like, well, I guess that's what impetus means. None of your viewers could even spell that word. So, I mean, you want to have this private between you and I could say anything. I could hold up a bottle of rust remover and everybody would just think that this was like fitting to what we were saying right now. Everybody's lost.
Okay.
What's the emphasis of Tito Ortiz? Look, he's a big deal. He was a world champion. A lot of it comes from jealousy. You really want to know? You want to know what got me pissed off and started in this sport in the first place? Was sitting at home and not having an opportunity. I was in a gym every day, Team Quest. I was in a gym. We had no less than 2 world champions in the room on a daily basis. This didn't count number 1 contenders, champions over in Pride where things were fixed. The guys that were coming in and training with us, we had at least 2 world champions on our team every day. I knew exactly where I stood in the world. I knew everybody's name that could whip my ass. All of them. Because I had them on a daily basis. I'm fighting down at the dog park. I can't get a manager to make a phone call for me. I couldn't get a promoter to know who I was. It was a tough spot, and it's part of the sport. Guys go through it all the time. I just remember when I went through it. And I went through this, and there was Tito. All the posters, headlining all the cards, biggest draw, own T-shirt and branding company. I mean, this guy was a huge deal. And I remember being jealous, and I remember thinking, look, Tito's a tough guy. I got no problem with that. But I'm sitting there going, I'm a tougher guy. I do have a problem with that. How do I get my opportunity? How do I break into this? This guy never be world champion if I was in the business right then, but I couldn't even get a contract to get into the company to get on the prelims to eventually work my way to Tito. I could have stepped right into a main event and whipped his ass back then, but I couldn't get the opportunity. That's where Tito comes from.
Okay. And now you get your opportunity, or you'll probably get your opportunity, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Do you have... Do you feel, I know it's a crazy question to ask a fighter, but because of the way your career stopped 2 years ago, do you feel an extra amount of pressure to not only prove to everyone that you still got it, to not only prove to everyone that you can fight in this new era of drug testing, but also to prove to Bellator that they made the right call by investing in you? Like, does this one feel a little different than, 148 or fighting Jones? You know what I mean? Like, it's different now, right?
Yeah, the third part, I haven't thought about the first 2 on your list, but yeah, the third part, man, look, I got a job to do, and that's the bottom line, and I'm a company guy. I don't come in and try to take all the money and leave town. I want everybody. I'm a capitalist, but I have a very socialistic approach to fighting, because there's guys on the undercard that aren't going to bring in any money. The guys on top of the bill have got to have a trickle-down effect and look out for everybody else, and I not only see that as my duty, but it used to happen to me. I was the guy on those cards that wasn't bringing in any tickets, but I needed something too. I had trainers and managers and my own goals, and just to get by, there had to be something. And a lot of times, that came from the top, but there was a trickle-down effect. I see some of these scumbags come in now. They try to grab all the money and run away and go, well, all the attention's on me. It's like, you're not totally wrong on that. You are the one bringing in the dollars, but you still got it's still a family here, right? You still got a group. You still got it doesn't matter if it's your opponent, your enemy, or some guy just trying to live his dream, man. The show doesn't go on with just 2 guys. So, yeah, man, I got a job to do, and I'll do it, and I will deliver.
A couple more questions for you. What would you compare this signing to? Is this Hall going to WCW? Is this Hogan? Like, it feels very much like, late 90s here. What would you compare you moving over to Bellator?
I suppose there's a little bit of feel of that of the Monday Night Wars, yes. But I didn't really think of it in those terms, man. I wanted an opportunity to compete, and that was really it. And then the backstory and everything I'm holding out from you, and full well that I am. If you haven't been able to pry me, I'll tell you over time. Okay. I'm just not ready to tell you today.
Why?
But I'll tell you over time. We'll do this time and again, and I will get you the impetus.
Okay. By the way, your friend CM Punk, of course, unsuccessful in his UFC debut. A, what did you think of it? And B, if it doesn't work out for him in the UFC, would you like to see Bellator sign him?
Well, I thought that Punk proved he was a fighter. I thought that he tried very hard. He got put in a terrible position. Physically, he didn't know how to get out of there. He didn't know where to push the knee, which way to roll, how to deal with the fence. That's a reality of a guy that tried to climb Mount Everest and with almost no time to prepare. But he tried hard. He was stuck right off the bat. He tried to get up. What Mickey Gall was doing to him that's as bad as ground and pound gets. He was dry. He had both legs in. He's teeing off, coming underneath, coming over the top. It's as bad as it gets, and Punk was pushing through it, trying to get back up to his feet. Gall's looking for chokes, and Punk's defending and trying to get back up to his feet. So I thought effort-wise, man, he gets an A for effort. Skill-wise, there was a big difference between the two. That's accurate. I can live with that. But I think that Punk had some moments out there, particularly when it's your heart. It's your heart that gets tested. That's really what we want to know as fighters. Who's tougher than the other guy? You can always talk about who's better and whose skills and the reach and who's tougher than who. And I thought that Punk went out there and I thought he was very tough.
Would you like to see him keep fighting?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what he wants to do. I've talked to him almost every day since it, and his attitude appears to be good. He's already back in the gym. He had his fight on a Friday. He was at practice on Monday. I don't know what he did. Did he watch? Did he jump in there? I couldn't tell you those details, but he's there. He's being a good teammate. This looks like this is the life that he wants to do. And will it go back to the UFC, or will it even go to a ring again? I don't know. Maybe it just turns into a hobby and this is what he wants to do. I really don't know, but he'll let us know, and he's got the skill set that if he wants people to be interested in him again, he'll come on your show and he'll build the interest. We both know he's got that skill set.
Well, Chael, we will leave it at that. Thank you very much. You didn't give us the entire impetus, but I think we got enough. A little taste.
Well, we're going to have to. You got a 9-hour show here with 75 guests that all suck. I mean, you started off with nothing against those guys. What is Ed Soros going to come on and tell us that's going to change MMA?
He's got big news.
What could he possibly have to drop on us that
Stay tuned.
Change MMA?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, everybody stay tuned. The ultimate tease, listen, the ratings are going to drop, Air. They're going to drop with one final word, and you know what it is. Kaboom.
Chael Sonnen, everyone. Thank you very much. The newest member of the Bellator MMA roster. In vintage form, we look forward to his debut in November.